I'll try and be quick, but a lot of things came to mind. I didn't share it earlier, but when we were hearing from Anita in particular, but others about the union and looking for diversity and leadership and all. But what came to mind, to me in part anyways, my father came to mind, and he wasn't a leader in the union, but he enlisted in the Army, and that was a proud point in his life. He enjoyed that. He was a paratrooper, but it meant a lot to him. He always shared some of his experiences. He also, when he got out of the Army, he became a steamfitter, a welder at EB, and then eventually a steamfitter. And he joined the Boilermakers Union, and then the Steamfitters Union. And I know it meant a lot to him also to be part of that. And if you think about it, in some ways, there's activism, in the service and in the unions, and not that it's necessarily being met. The things that Anita brought up, and the diversity and leadership, it's not necessarily being met right now. And she put a challenge out to those that were here earlier, and certainly still here. Put a challenge out there. If you're part of the union, then hope, and a person of minority persuasion, if you will, then hopefully you can step up or meet the challenges. Because a lot of times, that's how our voices are best heard and our issues are best heard, by the very people that carry those issues, by the very people that have lived those situations. And so I did want to share that real quick, because I know I had in my past I worked at EB, and I was a member of the Boilermakers Union that is part of Electric Boat. And and it does mean a lot. And sometimes, I might be losing focus as to what the point I'm trying to get, but step up to the challenge that Anita brought forth with her call out to get more diversity, and to challenge the current leadership, to challenge it, to bring on more diversity. And I also wanted to share this, and real quick, I promised my wife I'd be short, but the genocide, the sign up there says Rhode Island is guilty in genocide that's happened here. I did want to speak a little bit more about my tribe. It's Indigenous Peoples Day. The state of Rhode Island, 1673, 1675 time frame, we had the Great Swamp Massacre, where the militia, colonists, they came into a winter encampment of my people and murdered the women and children, the elders that were part of that encampment. That's part of what happened here in Rhode Island towards my people. I'm not taking away from any other person and what they went through or their people, but I wanted to focus on the Narragansett real quick. In 1880, the state took on this act, the state of Rhode Island took on an act to de-tribalize the Narragansett. That's what it was called, the De-Tribalization Act, wherein any Narragansett that went, they offered, I think it was $16.54. Something like that, every Narragansett that went in and signed a paper, all the lands that the Narragansett still had at the time were taken away, were effectively sold under this illegal act, because tribes couldn't be dealt with by state governments at that time. It had to be the federal government. But nonetheless, I wanted to point that out too. There were some significant points in history of how this state, and I don't care who was in leadership at the time, it's still the same mindset that how they dealt with the Narragansett, how other states have dealt with their Aboriginal people. The chief earlier, I forget his name and I apologize, but he spoke of it's not black or white or whatever the case may be. We had 500 plus nations in this country. We have 570, 580 maybe now federally acknowledged tribes. But that's what it is. It's not Native American broad brush. It's Narragansett. It's Wampanoag. It's Mashantucket. It's individual nations. And sadly, several hundred or thousands, perhaps, have been wiped out, are no longer here. Bella spoke of extinction and how animals are protected. Well, the Aboriginal people, the indigenous of this country, we need to be protected. But we're also there for everyone else. I also, what crossed my mind with my father, the Native Americans, per capita, represent the armed services in this country more than any other ethnicity. Despite what's been done to them, Native Americans, Narragansett and Wampanoag and Apache, they represent per capita more than any other ethnicity. And you think about that, they're still there despite what's been done to them, what was done to their ancestors. they're still defending Mother Earth and Turtle Island as it's known. I did want to share that with a couple more spots in history of what happened to the Narragansett here. 1880 de-tribalization, the Great Swamp Massacre. Of course, I already shared about this, the smoke shop raid and Lord knows how many other things that are evident at Rhode Island and how they treat the Narragansett. I wanted to share that, and again, if you heard Anita, she put out the call, she put out the challenge. Step up, if you're led to do so, step up and get involved, or hopefully get involved and hold leadership accountable like we do our elected officials. One last point, at least for now, Election Day is coming up November 3rd. Election Day is how sometimes that ballot is more important than sometimes what we say, because that's our voice in the voting booth. And hopefully we can get rid of the elected officials currently occupying offices, such as the White House. We can get rid of people that deserve to be gone one way or another. So vote, vote, vote. You get one vote, not 2 or 3 like Trump said. You get one vote, but make sure you take advantage of that, because that voice there, and make sure, and don't forget, they're trying to take away your right to vote, the mail-in ballots and other things. Don't take for granted that right to vote. It's very important. It's one of the most important voices we have. Thank you.
Nice.